For this presentation, we're going to go over Chapter 15, and we're going to talk specifically about some psychiatric disorders. The first one I'm going to start with, and we've already covered this somewhat, but I wanted to go into more detail here, is depression. Let's see. History. Well, depression, you know there are many different types of depression. If you start on page 544, you know there is major depression. You know there is bipolar depression. The difference being with bipolar you have periods of mania and depression. Major depression is just the negative mood. If you look on page 545, you can see that according to the DSM, which is the manual used to diagnose these things, up to 10 different symptoms of depression. And I guess what I wanted to kind of share with you here, there's reactive depression, there are all sorts of different types, that from the perspective of a neuroscience person or a physiological psychology person, I think one of the key issues that I think about often is, once again, this issue of behavioral specificity and receptor specificity. You know, we're always looking for that idea, the magic pill. Can we just take a pill and is it going to fix us? Well, there are a lot of assumptions about that in the world of neuroscience. The idea is, well, yeah, if we can isolate the exact neurobiological cause of this, if we can figure out which receptor subtype, which neurotransmitter is responsible, let's just fix that neurotransmitter at a pharmacological level and then fix the behavior. So I still see a lot of examples of this idea of reductionism, where the idea of just fix this and fix that, almost type reductionism. But I think we know more than that now about depression. I mean, depression is so variable. Different people have different symptomatology. Take eating and sleeping behavior. Some people eat more, some people eat less. Sleeping, some people sleep more, some people sleep less. So the idea that there's going to be this magic bullet that's just going to fix this neurotransmitter and fix behavior, I think is a little bit too simplistic. At the same time, we've made a lot of advances here with this. So what I wanted to do, starting on page about 549 or so, and 550 and 551, talk about kind of the history of psychopharmacological treatment. And actually it looks like it starts at about 551. There's a real history of treating depression in terms of psychopharmacology here, and it starts actually with the idea that the two neurotransmitters most implicated in depression, well, you know one of them, serotonin. Low levels of serotonin seem to be linked to poor mood states. The other neurotransmitter that seems to be linked in such a way is norepinephrine. Now, norepinephrine, if you look on 550, norepinephrine is one of those kind of alert type neurotransmitters. Remember, we talked about it with sleep near the locus coeruleus. So the idea that serotonin and norepinephrine seem to be involved, those two together are classified as what we know as monoamines. So one of the ideas is low levels of monoamines, norepinephrine and serotonin, may in fact be linked to depression. So 40, 50 years ago, when depression treatments first started, the products that were most often used were products on 551 known as monoamine oxidase inhibitors. So if serotonin and norepinephrine are monoamines, if you look at the little picture on 551, you can see serotonin and norepinephrine would be released in different parts of different synapses. They would bind, but if the idea is those are at low levels, normally serotonin and norepinephrine are destroyed by monoamine oxidases. They are enzymes that destroy the neurotransmitters of serotonin and norepinephrine. So what they started doing is they wanted to increase the levels of serotonin and norepinephrine, so they started giving monoamine oxidase inhibitors. Therefore, if you block the inhibitors, you'll actually increase the amount of functional serotonin and norepinephrine in the synapse, and thus this will actually help in terms of depression. And they did. The monoamine oxidase inhibitors did help. The problem is the problem of specificity here. There were a lot of side effects. You couldn't eat cheese. You couldn't eat a lot of different products because by blocking the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, that was affecting a whole lot of things in many different areas of the body. So the side effects were so bad. And once again, over time, this has gotten better. The next level of treatment, and some of these are still used today, were called tricyclic antidepressants. The tricyclics, as you can see, basically worked in a way that they blocked the reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine. And if you block the reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine, that would once again be useful. Some of the efficacy, meaning did they work with depression, were just as strong as some of the products today, but once again, some of the side effects were a little bit problematical as well. So those are the two older products, and once again, they were used, but some of the side effects, especially for the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, were bad. Look at any bottle of medication you're taking, and it'll say, don't take this if you're taking a MAO inhibitor. In the 70s, things changed remarkably. They came up with Prozac and the other serotonin-specific reuptake inhibitors. Those work, and actually it looks like it says on 552, the MAO inhibitors, they go through the list in the first paragraph of side effects for those that you couldn't eat a lot of other products if you were taking the MAO inhibitors. The SSRIs generally work a lot better. They seem to decrease eating behavior, some of them. They decrease sexual energy, what's the word, libidinal energy, if you will. But generally speaking, they're much safer. They seem to help a fair amount in depression. The book goes through some other products as well, such as lithium, which seems to be useful. Seems to regulate some second messenger products here, although they're not quite sure how it actually works. But what I'd like you to know is the SSRI products and how they work. Now, obviously, they have combination products like Effexor, which works with both norepinephrine and serotonin. I guess the big issue with the newer products is they are much more receptor specific. The older products worked with a lot of different systems, so they fixed the problem, but the side effects were so bad. The newer products are very receptor specific. They work reasonably well. They don't cause a lot of side effects because they have the specificity that they need, although at the same time they still cause some side effects, but certainly not the way that the old MAO inhibitors did work. So that is the history, the types. Let's also talk about C here, the non-pharmacological. We've already talked about this some. For people who are pharmacologically resistant, certainly I know, and you probably know, quite a few people who are on a lot of different products, and sometimes you can become resistant to them. ECT is still actually used and can actually be quite productive. It causes an electrical current going through the brain, and it can actually work. Sometimes a short-term memory loss happens, but it's still actually used. And even on 555, they talk about magnetic stimulation as well, which seems to have some positive effects as well. So they are still using some of these other things to help treat these disorders. And then finally, and something we talked about previously, we talked about seasonal affective disorder, where the idea is when the sun isn't up that people get quite sad many times. And on 558, going back to the sleep chapter, the idea that things like melatonin or sunlight can regulate the cycle a little bit. That might be part of it. We know melatonin is the precursor to serotonin, so there might be something to that as well. So that kind of covers the pharmacological nature of depression, and we'll call it a day on that particular one.